My name's Phoebe. At my sister's wedding, they gave me a cracked plastic chair near the kitchen, marked +1, like I wasn't family, just an accident someone forgot to uninvite. I wasn't in the slideshow, I wasn't in the toast, I wasn't even on the meal list. They smiled for photos while I ate a granola bar beside the mop bucket, and when I posted one picture, just one, they said I was ruining her big day. But how do you ruin something you were never really part of? And why do the people who erase you always act shocked when you finally speak? Would you have stayed quiet? Or would you have posted too? 3 weeks before the wedding, the invitation came. Not in a call, not in a message, just a glossy envelope dropped into my mailbox like a supermarket coupon. I opened it on my porch, one hand still clutching a lukewarm coffee. The envelope wasn't addressed by hand. No personal note, not even a scribbled heart. Just a mass-printed line. To our dearest family guest, we're so excited to have you. I stared at it longer than I should have. The word guest stuck in my throat. Not sister, not maid of honor, not even Phoebe. Simone got beloved bridesmaid Simone Redgrave on hers. I know because she posted a photo of it on Instagram. Rhodes Ever After, in bold cursive across her caption. I didn't say anything to Mom when she called later that evening. She asked if I got the invite. I told her yes. She asked if I was coming. I said, wouldn't miss it. But something about that envelope, it told me everything I needed to know. They weren't expecting me to show up. They were hoping I'd know better. The day of the wedding, I arrived an hour early. The sun was warm but not harsh, and everything had that southern storybook glow. You know, crepe myrtles bending like they're praying, white tent canopies fluttering like gospel choir robes. I parked around back so I wouldn't be in the way. I was carrying the gift, a wood and glass decanter set I'd had engraved with Delphine and Austin's initials, their wedding date just beneath. I wrapped it myself, even tied the ribbon. There was also a note in my purse, handwritten. I'd stayed up until 2 a.m., debating whether to sign it with love or all the best. At the check-in table, a young woman with a headset and too much blush flipped through her clipboard. She didn't smile. You're Phoebe Brandt? That's me. She tilted the sheet toward herself, like it would whisper secrets. You're marked under +1. We've set up some overflow seating near catering. Hope that's okay. I blinked. Sure, I'm flexible. She didn't look at me again. A few minutes later, I was seated next to a folding table, holding empty water pitchers. The chair creaked when I sat. I looked down. One of its legs had been taped. Gray duct tape. Right beside me, a heavy kitchen door swung open every 30 seconds, releasing bursts of hot air and the smell of steamed carrots. I sat there, alone, overdressed in a navy dress that wasn't black, because Delphine said black was too harsh for her theme. A server passed by me with a tray of shrimp cocktail and nearly bumped my elbow. He didn't apologize. I didn't say anything either. I just sat there, adjusting the hem of my dress, pretending I was invisible. They say families drift apart over time. This didn't feel like drift. This felt designed. Near the front of the tent, I saw Uncle Walt, who hadn't spoken to Delphine since he sued her ex-boyfriend over a boat. Dead center table. I spotted Aunt Cora, who forgot my birthday 3 years in a row, clinking glasses with the groom's mother. And then there was Simone, standing beside the sweetheart table in matching chiffon, throwing her head back in laughter, the kind that feels planned. Someone behind me called out, loud enough to reach the entire tent. Hey, where's the +1 from catering? I didn't answer. But I knew they meant me. I didn't turn around when I heard it, just sat still. Like if I stayed frozen long enough, I might disappear. The music shifted to something slow, predictable. Wine glasses clinked like it was rehearsed. My chair, still taped at the back leg, creaked whenever I moved. Garlic and overheated chafing dishes wafted from the kitchen. They'd set up a projector near the cake and sweetheart table. Memories of us, the rose gold sign said. People gathered, champagne in hand, already giggling at something sweet. I stayed where I was, one leg over the other, hands in my lap. My name wasn't going to be called. I didn't need to get closer to know. The slideshow began. Childhood birthdays, pool parties, Delphine's prom with the guy she once called a safe bet. That Christmas in Charleston, when I stayed home with the flu. That part, of course, was left out. 42 photos passed before I appeared in a group shot, and even then, my face was cropped out. Not blurred, just gone. Like someone zoomed in for balance. Meanwhile, Simone stood center frame, smiling wide, arms around Delphine and Mom. Someone behind me whispered, "Wow, such a beautiful family." I didn't flinch, but something in my chest shifted. Not sharp, just tight, like a lid sealing shut. That night, I lay awake in bed, shoulders aching. Too much fake laughing, too much ginger punch. Sleep wasn't coming. I grabbed my phone, opened Instagram. The hashtag was everywhere. Rhodes ever after. Delphine in her dress. Austin beaming like he hit the jackpot. Guests dancing, crying, toasting. It all looked perfect. I scrolled through 83 public posts. I appeared in one. Not tagged, not posed. Just in the background of someone's table selfie. Walking past, head turned, slightly blurred. Barely there. I zoomed in anyway, studied my face like a fingerprint. Maybe that's how I looked to them all along, I thought. Background noise? No anger, not yet. Just a numbness, like my body understood something my mind didn't. At 2 a.m., I finally got up, walked into the quiet hallway, phone still in hand. Mom had asked me earlier to check out the welcome photo display. I hadn't. Now felt like the time. The air smelled faintly of eucalyptus and frosting, photos clipped to twine, framed in light wood. Mom's touch. Vintage but refined, she'd called it. There it was. A new Brandt family portrait. Dad, Mom, Delphine, Simone, navy and cream outfits, lake backdrop, last year's reunion. I wasn't in it. I blinked, remembered that day, bringing extra chairs, holding Mom's purse while she fixed her hair, standing just outside the frame. I returned to the tent. "That photo," I said quietly. Mom looked up from her dessert. "Hmm? When was it taken?" She hesitated. Just a second too long. "Delphine said the original looked off balance," she said. "This one's cleaner." I nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't ask if she thought I wouldn't notice. I just turned and walked away. It wasn't that I didn't belong in the photo. It was that they decided I didn't matter enough to include. I didn't go far. Just enough to breathe. The tent had started dimming, string lights flickering on overhead like polite fireflies. I leaned against a wooden post, wrapped in ivy and white chiffon. The cool fabric against my arm helped steady something in me I didn't know was shaking. Someone inside tapped the mic, and the music faded out. The toast segment was beginning. I'd given them my speech 2 days before. Wrote it by hand. 4 paragraphs, folded neatly inside a cream envelope with my name written in cursive. No flourish, no emojis. Just me, just heart. I'd stayed up until past midnight debating the first line. Scratched out, to my sister, 5 different ways before settling on something more neutral. The planner promised she'd include it in the rotation. "Of course," she'd said, her smile too shiny to trust. "We'll make sure it's read by someone close to her." Now I watched from a distance as the MC, a chipper woman in a red jumpsuit, flipped through a short stack of cards like she was auditioning for a game show. Simone read one. Austin's college friend read another. Then Delphine's boss, who'd flown in from Boston, took the mic and told a story about Delphine solving a crisis with poise beyond her years. The room laughed. My sister wiped away a tear. But no one read my card. They skipped right past it. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just watched a piece of me get left in someone's pocket, or a trash can, or a purse zipped too tight. I had something to say, I thought. I had something to offer, but silence took the mic. Eventually, I drifted to the bar at the far edge of the tent, poured a splash of wine. Not red, not white, something rosé and forgettable. That was when I saw it. Delphine and Austin at the front table, surrounded by the bridal party, laughing as they opened gifts. A photographer snapped each one. A planner scribbled down notes. Who gave what? Who to thank? Then I saw it. A wooden memory box, ocean blue, lined in soft velvet, tied with ivory ribbon and a brass clasp. The inside lid held one of our childhood photos. Us on the swing set, grass stains on our knees. I'd added quotes from Mom, old family sayings, little doodles of our old dog. I'd made it myself. Delphine smiled as she opened it. "This must be from Aunt Evelyn," she said. "She always sends the most nostalgic things." Simone nodded, tossing her hair. "Classic Evelyn. She's the memory queen." I didn't say a word. Didn't raise a hand, didn't laugh, didn't cry. Just watched them thank a woman who hadn't even flown in for the wedding. They handed off the moment I made with my hands, I thought. My history, wrapped in someone else's name. There was no one to tell. No one who'd believe I didn't make a fuss because I wanted to ruin the moment, but because I wanted to preserve something of myself. I walked toward one of the back pillars, slipped into its shadow, and leaned there, still, unseen. The music picked up again. Champagne fizzed in flutes. People clapped as Delphine stood for a photo with her in-laws. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the envelope. The speech. I tore it once. No ceremony, just a quick, clean rip. Then another. Then again. 4 pieces. 8. I shoved them back into the purse. This wasn't the first time I was overlooked, but it was the first time I decided not to ask why. Maybe the real gift was realizing silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it's just permission. I stood near the draped column, trying to breathe through the tightness in my chest. My eyes landed on the centerpieces, ivory roses with dusty blue accents, arranged exactly like I'd suggested months ago. Back then, Delphine said they looked too funeral. Then she saw the same palette in a bridal magazine, and suddenly they were tasteful. Timeless. Her idea. That's how things go in this family. You offer something quietly. If it works, someone else takes credit. If it doesn't, they act like you were never part of it. A month before the wedding, I found this venue. Not Delphine, not Simone. Me. I was scouting for a client in Beaufort when I came across Oakshade Manor. Big oaks, soft light, a classic southern porch, elegant without being showy. I snapped some photos and texted them to Delphine. "This place is perfect, elegant, shaded, great for photos." She replied 10 minutes later. "Send me the contact. Looks cute." No emoji. No thank you. Just a request. Still, I called the manager, used my company's vendor discount, got them a better rate than what was listed. I thought maybe, just maybe, helping her shine would bring me back into the fold. It didn't. A week later, I was added to the bridal coordination group chat. 8 people total. Delphine, Simone, a few cousins and friends. I chimed in when it made sense. Flower types, seating flow, timeline tweaks. No one reacted to my messages, but I assumed silence meant approval. Then, 2 weeks before the wedding, the group chat disappeared. Not archived, not muted, just gone. I checked again, switched apps, restarted my phone, still gone. I texted Simone. "Hey, can't find the bridal group. Did I get dropped by mistake?" She answered 30 minutes later. "Oh, Delphine wanted to streamline things to bridal party only. No big deal. Hope you understand." Sure. Of course. No big deal. I never brought it up again. Now, watching the table runners I'd chosen ripple under the fan, it hit me. I hadn't told anyone I picked the venue, or the florist, or the tasting date. Guests walked by, admiring the setup. Delphine has such an eye for detail. She always could pull off a vision. She should have gone into event planning. That last one came in different forms throughout the night. She's got that natural elegance. She's the one who carries the family name right. She doesn't half do anything. I stood near the edge of the room, shoulder against the same beam I'd measured weeks ago with the venue manager to check fabric length. The curtain had a small tear, probably from setup. I knew where the backups were. I could have fixed it, but I didn't. Not because I wasn't capable, though yes, I was bitter, but because I'd finally accepted what I was. The invisible architect. The one who lays the foundation, but doesn't get to stand on stage. I don't think they meant to be cruel, not deliberately. It's quieter than that. Like leaving someone out of a speech, not from malice, but because you never pictured them there in the first place. I stayed in my corner while they posed and laughed. I even smiled when Delphine glanced over and gave me a small nod. I nodded back. And in my head, I repeated it like a vow. They erased me from the planning, but not from the foundation. I won't let them forget that. After I nodded back to Delphine, I turned before she could say anything. Or worse, nothing at all. The kind of silence that echoes. I headed toward the cocktail garden, weaving through linen-covered tables and guests still buzzing with secondhand joy. Dusk had fallen. The sky was fading, and the string lights overhead had taken over. Someone lit citronella candles, the smell sharp and metallic. I hadn't eaten much, so I walked toward the water station. That's when it happened. A blonde woman I didn't recognize, early 40s, satin dress too tight, strode up and, without a smile or a word of hesitation, handed me her purse. "Could you hold this just a sec? I need to fix my shoe." She spoke like I was already doing her a favor, like I was there to help. Before I could respond, she crouched, adjusting a heel. Her clutch felt expensive, minimalist, no receipts, no scratches. I scanned the area, waiting for someone to laugh or say she was joking. No one did. A server carrying crab cakes caught my eye, then looked away. When the woman stood, she grabbed her purse back like I was furniture. No thank you. No acknowledgement. I stood there for a beat, stunned, then quietly made my way to the lawn's edge. I thought, what about me said, not family? But the better question was, what made her assume I worked here? Maybe it was the navy dress, plain, no glitter, no fuss. Maybe it was the bun, the muted lipstick. Or maybe it was how I hovered too often, stayed out of the frame, behind the scenes. Useful. Weeks earlier, I'd been CC'd on a florist email. A sample arrangement needed approval. Simone forwarded it with the subject line, "Sending to Phoebe, logistics." That was it. Not Phoebe, sister of the bride. Not even Ms. Brandt. Just a task. No one else in the thread had a title. No one else was reduced to parentheses. I reread it 3 times. My stomach dropped. But I didn't respond. Because I knew it wasn't a mistake. When they define you by function, I thought, they forget you're a person. Later, I wandered behind the tent, near the catering carts and folding chairs. I knew my seat would still be empty. One of the servers walked past with a tray of mini tarts. He paused. "You sure you're not one of us?" he asked, grinning gently. I blinked. Didn't know whether to laugh or nod. He didn't wait for an answer, just held out a tart. "You look like you could use sugar." I took it. It tasted like lemon and disappointment. I didn't belong at the bridal table. I wasn't welcome among the guests. Maybe I was part of the staff, just not on payroll. Inside the tent, the laughter spiked. Someone must have given a toast. Another glowing story about Delphine's grace under pressure. I looked toward the tent. The light inside flickered warmly against gauzy panels. That light had never quite reached me. And suddenly, I understood something. Maybe I stayed quiet all this time because the moment I spoke, I wouldn't be mistaken for staff anymore. I'd be labeled a problem. I stayed at the edge of the cocktail garden a little longer, just long enough to watch the next round of toasts echo out under the tent. Each story someone told about Delphine was met with gleaming smiles and choreographed gasps, like the room had agreed ahead of time which jokes to laugh at and which memories to clap for. Eventually, I slipped back inside. Not out of interest, but because my feet were cramping and the mosquitoes had found me. I moved along the side of the tent, keeping to the shadows like a roadie at a concert, blending in with servers adjusting drink trays and catering staff rolling in dessert carts. And that's when I saw him. 2 tables from the sweetheart table, seated directly in Delphine's line of sight. Blake. Clean-shaven, navy suit, relaxed, like this wasn't a room full of ghosts for him. I hadn't seen him in 2 years. Not since the night I learned he'd been seeing someone behind my back. Someone who, as it turned out, used to sit beside me at Thanksgiving dinners. I told Delphine everything back then. She was the one I called when I found the text messages. And now, there he was. Laughing. Comfortable. Wearing the exact cologne I once bought him for Christmas when I thought we still had a future. A woman at the next table leaned toward me and whispered, "I think he was Delphine's college buddy. He flew in from Colorado. Must have been close." "College buddy?" He turned his head, caught my eye, and then he nodded. Just a slow, polite nod, like you give a coworker you once shared an elevator with too many times. That was it. I didn't nod back. I kept walking toward the buffet, trying not to look like my stomach had tied itself in a knot. I wasn't hungry, but moving gave me something to do. From behind me, the newlyweds made their way through the tent, table by table, doing the rounds like politicians before an election. They were gracious, all hand squeezes and compliments. When they reached my row, I froze. Delphine was less than 4 feet away. She leaned over a guest, laughed at something he said, her hand brushing her husband's back. Then she turned and walked right past me. No pause, no glance. Not even that tight-lipped "thanks for coming" nod. I stood still. If she looked at me, maybe she'd have to remember that I existed before her wedding hashtag. Maybe she'd have to acknowledge what she'd built her whole weekend on. But she didn't. She moved on to the next table, like I wasn't even standing there. And no one, not one person, blinked at the fact that I hadn't been greeted. One older couple actually smiled at me, like I might be refilling the drinks. And I just stood there, sandwiched between 2 flower columns I helped her pick. I remembered the vendor, the swatches, how we sat on her porch debating whether cream or ivory looked better against eucalyptus. They didn't forget me. They made a decision. I moved toward the dessert station, past the chocolate fountains and tiny eclairs. I didn't take anything. Didn't want to. Because in that moment, right there, under soft lighting and curated perfection, something inside me hardened. Delphine wasn't my sister anymore. She was just someone I happened to be related to, and I couldn't tell which hurt more, that she walked past me, or that I expected it. By the time I made it back to my assigned seat, most of the main tent had already shifted into that post-dinner haze, half-full plates pushed aside, waiters weaving through conversations, someone somewhere always laughing louder than necessary. I lowered myself into the chair gently, partly because my feet were sore, but mostly because I didn't want the chair to squeak again and remind anyone that I existed. In front of me sat a woman I'd never seen before. Her curls were perfect, her laugh even more so, directed toward a man who wore his tie loose like he thought it made him charming. Based on the way she touched his shoulder, I guessed she was his date. I looked around the table. No one I recognized. The entire group looked like they were on a break from something else. Vendors, +1s, and me. This wasn't just overflow seating. This was the place where they sent the people they didn't want in the photos. Simone passed by. She caught my eye for a split second, then looked straight through me like I was part of the linen. This wasn't just a seating oversight, I thought. This was a message. You don't belong here either. My napkin was still folded, untouched. A waiter came by and cleared the place setting next to mine, muttering something about miscounts. I didn't ask. A few minutes later, Aunt Cora appeared like she had wandered in from a side room. She wore her usual floral print and an expression like she was trying to solve a riddle. "Oh, Phoebe," she said, her voice lilting. "I didn't see your name on the table chart. I thought maybe you didn't come." "I've been here since noon," I answered, not even bothering to smile. Cora's eyes blinked once, then narrowed slightly, like she wasn't sure what to say. "Oh, maybe they updated the chart last minute. You're still helping with things, right? I paused, just long enough for her to feel it. Not anymore. She didn't respond to that, just gave me a soft, well, and moved on to greet someone else. It didn't hurt, exactly. It just confirmed everything I already knew. When they don't include you in the design, it's not an accident when you don't show up in the layout. The string banner above the guest book table had names stitched in gold cursive: Delphine, Austin, bridesmaids, groomsmen, family. My name wasn't there. Not even as a footnote. A couple passed me talking about the gift bags and how Delphine always does everything right. Another said she couldn't wait for the brunch tomorrow. I hadn't received an invite to that either. As people drifted off to dance or loiter at the dessert table, I pulled out my phone and stared at the blank screen. No new texts, nothing from Mom, no check-in, no acknowledgement. And for the first time, I didn't feel anxious about it. You reach a point where being ignored is less painful than being noticed as a mistake. So I sat, back straight, eyes forward, like a sculpture no one had ordered. I didn't text anyone, didn't open social media. Instead, I opened the Notes app. And I started writing, not to anyone. Not for sympathy, just facts. How the name tag said, +1. How the memory box got credited to Aunt Evelyn. How the photo board cropped me out. How my seat was behind someone's date. I wasn't documenting for drama. I was preserving history. Because I didn't leave. Not yet. But I started drafting my exit without telling a soul. The music shifted again. More upbeat now. Something vaguely familiar that I couldn't name but knew I'd forget by morning. I pushed myself up from the table where I'd been pretending to sip water and stepped out of the tent into the cooler night air. I wasn't expecting her to follow, but I should have known. Maureen always liked to tie up loose ends, even if she left the stitching crooked. I heard the click of her heels before I saw her silhouette. She paused beside me, hands clasped like she was holding on to something she couldn't quite say. "Phoebe," she started softly, like I was a house pet about to bolt. "Please don't cause a scene. This is Delphine's day." I turned toward her, slow and level. "I've been here since morning. What scene have I caused, other than breathing?" She flinched, barely. But it was enough. She looked over her shoulder like someone might overhear. "She's just under a lot of pressure. Big crowd, important people. It's not the time to stir things up." I almost laughed. "You're asking me not to react, but you haven't asked her not to act." She didn't answer that. Just stood there for a beat too long and then nodded, like the conversation had somehow ended itself. After she left, I pulled my phone out of my clutch to check the time. 7:47. A message lit up the screen. It was from Darla, the wedding MC. "Darla? Hey!" I wasn't supposed to say anything, but Delphine asked me to leave your name off the thank you list during toasts. Just wanted to avoid tension. I stared at the message, read it once, then again. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd erased me on purpose, proactively, strategically. They were afraid that hearing my name would break the spell. I typed a response. Deleted it. Tried again. Deleted that too. There was no version of the truth that would land gently with someone who had already rewritten the script. Instead, I tucked the phone away and started walking along the outer path that circled the tent. The lanterns along the gravel walk cast a warm, washed-out glow that caught on the edges of fallen leaves. Everything was manicured, nothing left to chance. This wasn't a mistake, I thought. This was policy. From where I stood near the edge of the pond, I could hear the laughter from inside the tent. A ripple of applause, a glass clinking. Probably another story about how Delphine handled a college group project with grace and leadership. I looked down at my reflection. The water caught me, distorted me slightly with the ripple from a breeze, but I was still there, still standing, still not invited in. I didn't feel rage. Not exactly. It was something sharper, but quieter. Resolve. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to interrupt the toast, or stand up and make a speech that would get twisted the second it touched someone else's mouth. I just needed to stop pretending this didn't hurt. That it hadn't always hurt. I picked up a small rock from the edge of the path and skipped it across the water. It bounced twice and then disappeared without sound. And that's when I knew, really knew, that I wasn't part of this performance. I was just the backstage crew who had finally stepped into the light. Next time someone asked me not to ruin the day, I'd remind them I wasn't the one who scripted it. I stayed near the water's edge just long enough to collect myself, not because I was fragile, but because I didn't want to walk back into that tent looking like I needed saving. The sun had dipped fully now. Lanterns glowed under the tent like fireflies caught mid-conversation. The air smelled like roasted meat and cloying sugar, and my stomach reminded me I hadn't eaten since mid-morning. I moved toward the buffet line, trying to blend with the latecomers. A young server held a tablet and a worried smile. "Name?" "Phoebe Brandt," I said. He scanned the screen, tapped, scanned again. I don't see a meal listed. Any dietary notes?" "Yes. Vegetarian, no dairy," I said plainly. He blinked. "Sorry, you're not on the list." I took a breath. "I emailed that in weeks ago, got a confirmation from the planner's assistant." He motioned to a woman a few feet away, clipboard in hand and hair pulled too tight. She looked up as if I'd interrupted something vital. "We don't have you marked for a dietary meal," she said, voice already dismissive. "You can grab whatever's left after table 14. "Which table is 14? I asked. She pointed toward the far corner, where cake plates were already being passed. So that meant nothing warm, no apology, no concern. Just another small erasure, served cold. I walked back to my table and sat down, resisting the urge to crumple my napkin just for the satisfaction of ruining something. Instead, I reached into my clutch and pulled out the granola bar I always carried for emergencies. Apparently, this qualified. I unwrapped it slowly, took a small bite, chewed like it mattered. Somewhere behind me, laughter built again. I scrolled my phone absently, trying to anchor myself to something dull. That's when I saw it. A guest, someone I didn't know, had posted a story to Instagram. It was a video. Shaky, low light, poorly framed, but unmistakable. Me, seated alone near the catering corridor. Head down. Chewing. The caption read, "Staff breakin' hard." I stared at it. The post wasn't tagged, but the comments rolled in. "Is that the wedding planner? I thought she was part of the family?" "Nope, she's always back there." Always back there. Simone texted me within 5 minutes. "Simone, you shouldn't be sitting there. People are talking." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because none of the ones I wanted to say could be softened enough to fit through her filter of image management. Instead, I saved the video to my phone. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I didn't even sigh. I just sat. Because the joke wasn't the story. The story was the silence that followed it. No one, not Delphine, not Mom, not a single cousin, said a word in the comments. No defense, no correction. They saw it. They let it stand. This isn't about food, I thought. This isn't about being left off a list. It was about place, position, and I'd never been given one. If they were going to serve me last, I'd make sure they remembered who stayed hungry. After saving the Instagram video to my phone, I slipped the device back into my purse like I'd tucked away evidence. I stood slowly, smoothed the front of my dress, and walked toward the restrooms on the far end of the venue. Not because I needed to go, but because I needed somewhere quiet, somewhere that didn't smell like champagne foam or burnt buttercream. It was quieter in the side hallway, dim, except for 2 sconces flickering along the wall, casting strange shadows. As I leaned against the cool plaster, I overheard 2 voices behind a curtain separating the staff corridor. One woman, maybe a vendor or part of the floral team, said lightly, "You know, I think a couple folks here weren't even originally listed. Bride said to squeeze them in if there was space." The second voice laughed softly. The kind of laugh people use when they're pretending to be generous. Yeah, I had to rearrange 3 tables this week. One girl's name popped up, like 3 days ago. No entree preference or anything. Then a pause. I think her name was Phoebe. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. But my spine did something new. It straightened, like my body was tired of curling into the version of myself they allowed. A planner assistant peeked out from around the curtain and blinked when she saw me. She gave a tight smile. Oh, hi. I think you're seated by the catering entrance, right? I held her gaze. I am. She hesitated, flipping a page on her clipboard like it might rewrite history. Looks like you were added in overflow. No big deal. Just, last-minute adjustments. I didn't ask her to explain. I already knew. I hadn't missed the RSVP deadline. I just hadn't been on the list at all. As I stepped back into the corridor, my phone buzzed. I figured it was another weather alert, or maybe a text from Simone asking if I could help with cleanup. But no, it was from her. Simone, you've been pretty chill, but maybe don't ruin this now. People are watching. Delphine's boss is here. No greeting, no context, no apology. Just a warning dressed as advice. I stared at the message. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed, "Tell Delphine I don't need the mic. I already have the truth." I let the words sit there, pixelated and perfect. Then I hit delete, because saying it to Simone wouldn't matter. She didn't care what was true. She cared what looked tidy. And the thing about people like her? They're only uncomfortable when you show them what they've carefully edited out. I walked back toward the buffet line, not because I wanted food, but because I needed a surface to lean on, and opened my notes app. The draft was already there, half written. I added more. Screenshot of the cracked chair. Photo of the gift I gave, now attributed to someone else. A forward of the email confirming my dietary restrictions, never honored. The Instagram video of me chewing granola beside a mop bucket. Then I typed a single line. Not flowery, not bitter. I helped build this wedding. I was almost erased from it, but ghosts leave records too. I didn't post it, not yet. I just saved it, drafted, loaded. Sometimes the most powerful speech is the one you don't deliver, yet. The tent had started to empty slightly. People moving toward the fire pit, lighting cigars, slipping off heels, loosening ties. I moved with them, but not really among them. I stood at the edge of it all, where the music softened into the night air and the string lights barely reached the gravel path. There was no wind, no momentous signal, just a feeling that finally settled over me. It was time. I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen, opened the gallery. The image was already selected. The chair. The cheap plastic one taped at the back leg. The one marked with a crooked label that read +1, slapped on like a joke that got funnier every time someone ignored it. I didn't add a caption, no filter, no call-out. I hit post. The app blinked once, and the photo joined the feed, sliding between curated shots of first dances and designer centerpieces, between laughter and love, and Delphine's rehearsed perfection. I slipped the phone back into my bag and walked inside. Not rushed, not smug, just steady. In less than 10 minutes, I saw it begin. A subtle shift, guests suddenly glancing down at their phones, then looking back up toward me, whispering behind champagne glasses. A bridesmaid froze mid-laugh, eyes locked on something on her screen. I stood near the drinks table and poured myself a half glass of seltzer, waited, let it breathe. Simone was the first to approach. She didn't say hello. "Phoebe, did you post that on purpose?" I didn't look away from the bubbles in my glass. "What would make you think it was an accident?" Her lips parted slightly, like she had more to say, but nothing made it out. She turned and walked off, back into the blur of bodies and music. No one else confronted me. But the difference was tangible. Delphine didn't come over. She didn't call me out or ask me to delete it. But she saw it. That much was clear. People started skimming around me like I was a hazard, a warning light. And I didn't mind. I didn't flinch. I found my chair again, the one tucked near the server's exit, and sat back down. Quietly. Visibly. This time, I didn't try to be small. There were no words in the post, but somehow, everyone heard me. It wasn't revenge, it was record-keeping. Every moment I'd swallowed, every name I hadn't been called, every seat I wasn't offered. It had always been stacking. And tonight, I gave it form. I became a mirror, and no one liked what they saw. For the rest of the evening, I sat still while the party moved awkwardly around me. People danced harder, laughed louder, like they were compensating for something they didn't know how to apologize for. Nobody said anything, but they all felt it. And if that photo unsettled them, the caption I hadn't written yet would finish the job. I didn't check my phone again right away. I didn't need to. The tension inside the tent had shifted, tighter, like a thread pulled one tug too far. People moved differently now. Conversations stalled mid-sentence when I walked past, like I'd become an echo no one wanted to admit they heard. When I finally glanced at my screen, there it was. A new message. Simone. Simone, what are you doing, Phoebe? You're making her look bad. This could tank her at work. Just take it down. No, hey! No, how are you? Just panic dressed up like concern. I stared at it for a while, then typed back. So you know it's true then. I never hit send. Didn't need to. Some truths are best served without commentary. They didn't want peace. They wanted silence, neatly gift-wrapped and passed around as harmony. So I let them keep their version of peace, but not without a mirror. I took a slow walk past the sweetheart table again, not because I had business there, but because I was curious to see who still sat near the throne. Blake was still there, laughing, comfortable, a drink in his hand, the exact cocktail he used to order at our favorite bar, back when I still thought he told me everything. He didn't speak when I passed, didn't even flinch, but I saw his eyes drop briefly to my phone screen as it lit up with another message. Someone else sharing the post. He knew. He knew why I posted it, and he still stayed seated. At her table. I didn't expect him to get up, not really, but I think part of me wanted him to look uncomfortable, to shift in his chair, maybe to glance my way with something resembling regret. He didn't, so I kept walking. The music had picked up again, trying to drag the evening back to the script. A line dance started, a conga line formed. Laughter roared like an engine being revved a little too hard. The MC chirped something about cupcakes and late-night s'mores. I stood by the guest book table. The banner above it read, "Thank you for being part of our forever." I scanned the pages. Dozens of entries, handwritten notes, doodles, glitter pens. Mine wasn't there. I had stopped asking for inclusion, but I was still learning how exclusion worked. It's not always loud, not a slap or a door slammed shut. Sometimes it's just a blank space where your name should have been. A missing seat, a skipped mention, a silence that looks a lot like decorum. I watched a little girl twirl in front of the photo booth as her mother adjusted her bow. Someone walked by and said, "She looks just like her Aunt Delphine." I wanted to say, "She also looks like me," but I didn't, because that was the thing. The people here weren't interested in resemblance. They were interested in reflection, and I didn't reflect what they wanted to see. So they looked away. They wanted a perfect memory. I gave them an accurate one instead. By the time I made it back home, the wedding was long over. My heels came off first, tossed near the doorway with a thud that echoed more like punctuation than relief. The apartment was still, dim, except for the kitchen light I always left on, and the faint hum of the fridge reminded me the world outside the reception had kept turning. I set my clutch on the table, kicked the door closed, and took a slow breath. Then I opened my laptop. Not for emails, not for work, just to upload what they'd forgotten I'd been recording all along. I scrolled through my phone's gallery, past screenshots, awkward selfies, and then paused on the one video that mattered. Less than a minute long, shaky, informal. But it said everything. It was me. No makeup, no spotlight. Standing in a field beside the venue 4 days before the wedding. arranging flowers, helping the caterer unload chairs, talking to the florist about windproofing the centerpieces. My voice could be heard faintly behind the lens. Let's move the table a little west. The light hits better at 5 p.m. It was nothing flashy, nothing emotional, just evidence. I posted it to the same platform where the chair photo had lived. Caption: I helped build the wedding. You just chose not to see me. No hashtags, no filters, just facts. Then I closed the laptop, sat down on the couch, and waited. I wasn't even halfway through a glass of water before my phone buzzed. Once. Twice. Then nonstop. Comments came first. Wait, she did all this? She's the sister. Why wasn't she part of the bridal party? This is heartbreaking. Someone I hadn't spoken to since high school shared the post with the comment, "This is why I hate curated weddings. Too many people erased for the aesthetic." Then came the DMs. Delphine's coworker, "This is disappointing. It changes how I see her." A cousin I hadn't seen in years. "I always wondered why you looked like a stranger in those photos." And Simone. "Of course, Simone." Simone, "Take this down. It's getting out of hand." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Visibility isn't revenge, it's correction. They ruined the day. I just turned on the lights. I remembered what Mom said hours earlier. "Don't ruin this for her." Her tone, her face, like she was warning me not to throw gasoline on a wedding gown. But what if it had already been burning? What if I was just standing near the smoke? The post climbed in views, shared, reposted, quoted in people's stories. For once, my absence wasn't quiet. For once, I wasn't being whispered about. I was being read out loud. And not because I screamed, but because I finally said something at all. It wasn't a tantrum, it was a ledger. They thought I'd just sit through it, nod, and disappear like usual. But they forgot something critical. Ghosts leave records too. And I wasn't haunting them with anger. I was reminding them I existed. Because you don't get to shame the person you tried to erase for showing up on film. I woke to a screen full of missed calls. 13, to be exact. 2 from Delphine, 4 from Simone, the rest split between Mom and unknown. The kind of calls you get not because someone is worried, but because they've been caught. I didn't listen to the voicemails right away. I let them sit, lined up like a jury, waiting for me to pretend I owed them something. Instead, I went into the kitchen, made tea, and let the water boil over once, before I remembered I was making it. Eventually, I pressed play. Mom's voice, low and controlled. "You made your point. Can we move past this now?" Then Delphine's text came through. "This is affecting things beyond just us. Please don't take it further." Simone again. "You win. Can we move on?" I stared at those words for a long time. You win. Like this was a contest. Like I'd flipped the table instead of simply pulling up a chair that was mine to begin with. Not one of them said it. The word that mattered. Sorry. Because that's what people like them do. They circle the apology without touching it. They manage optics, not impact. I set the phone down and opened the laptop again. Not to post, but to watch. Just to remember that I had proof, and that proof had a pulse. The video was still climbing in views, reposts, comments, some anonymous, some uncomfortably familiar. "She's the sister? What in the world?" How do you forget someone who helped build it all? The silence from the family speaks volumes. I didn't respond to any of them, but I read every word. Not because I needed validation, but because this time I wasn't the one who had to explain. It wasn't the attention I wanted. It was the clarity I needed. For so long, I thought if I kept quiet, they'd notice the absence and pull me in. But the truth? Some people only miss you when they need something. And when they don't, you become background. You become convenient to forget. So I gave them something they couldn't forget. I opened my calendar and deleted the recurring reminder for Delphine and Austin's anniversary gift. Unfollowed her. Muted Simone. Boxed up the wedding gift I had planned. An engraved frame with their names, the one I'd spent 2 hours choosing fonts for. I slid it to the back of my closet, beneath old tax folders and winter scarves. Then I grabbed a sticky note and wrote just one sentence. Closure doesn't always knock. I stuck it inside the kitchen cabinet, a place I'd see it often, just in case I ever forgot that the door doesn't always slam. Sometimes it just stays closed. Not locked, not barricaded, just no longer open. I didn't call anyone that day. Didn't post another thing. Didn't check if they were still talking about me online. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about letting go. It's not a grand declaration. It's a choice made in increments. One boundary, one silence, one deletion at a time. And I was finally getting good at it. This wasn't reconciliation. It was release. The morning light didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like a quiet ending that didn't need to be announced. I brewed coffee like I always did. 2 scoops, filtered water, that chipped mug with the faded, "Not today, Satan" slogan. No text, no calendar alert, just air and space and silence. At 9:17, a notification buzzed. A cousin I barely speak to forwarded me an invite to the post-wedding brunch. The message said, "Thought you'd want this? Maybe it was sent to spam?" It hadn't been. It had been sent to someone else, to be passed to me. Like a crumpled napkin no one wanted to place directly in my hand. I didn't respond. I didn't go. There was nothing left to be seated for. I'd already stood for myself. I cleaned the kitchen instead. Not aggressively, just enough to feel like I had control over something. Scrubbed the counter, rinsed the fruit bowl, tossed out the invitation, gently folded, into the trash. At 10:30, my phone lit up again. Mom. Maureen. Just tell me you're not going to ruin the holidays too. I stared at it for a full minute. Typed, "The holidays ruined themselves." Then backspaced every letter. Some things are better left unsent. I didn't block her. I muted the thread. That felt more powerful. The difference between a slammed door and one quietly closed from the inside. I opened my laptop, clicked into my social media account, and scrolled. The chair photo, the video, the post. They were still there, untouched. I didn't delete them. I didn't hide them. But I didn't speak of them again either. Let them sit like testimony, not tantrum. I boxed up the frame I had ordered for Delphine and Austin, still wrapped in bubble wrap, the corner already yellowing from sun exposure where it had sat on my shelf too long. I didn't throw it away. I tucked it in a bin in the hall closet, beneath things that didn't fit anymore. I walked to my desk and opened a draft email I had written weeks before, when I still believed I might be asked to give a speech at the rehearsal dinner. It said, "You lost a sister. I reclaimed a self." I didn't hit send. I deleted it. Not out of forgiveness, but because some things don't need to be spoken twice. Then I whispered to myself, like a blessing. They wanted me quiet. They didn't realize silence has weight. And in that moment, I felt something shift. Not triumph, not pride. Just enough. This time, I wasn't disappearing. I was simply no longer showing up where I was erased. The week passed without drama. No more texts, no voicemails. The silence became something I stopped checking for and simply accepted. It was no longer waiting to be broken. It had settled in like furniture, something you learn to walk around. On Sunday morning, I opened my closet, reaching for a sweater, and saw it again. The envelope I had folded over and taped shut. Inside, the original chair label, still creased, still marked in faded ink. +1. I didn't frame it, didn't shred it either. I slid it into a plastic sleeve and placed it in a file folder labeled "Kept Receipts." Not for revenge, for memory. I used to keep things because they reminded me of good moments. But this? This I kept because I needed to remember what it had cost me to stay quiet for so long. Later that afternoon, I walked to the lake a few blocks from my apartment. It wasn't much. A man-made park, a few ducks, a line of benches with names etched into plaques. I brought my journal, not my phone. The first bench I passed was already taken. An older woman in a windbreaker was tossing breadcrumbs to a crowd of pushy mallards. I sat on the next one. We didn't speak at first. just the quiet thump of wings and the occasional squawk from a duck who'd arrived too late for the bread. After a few minutes, she glanced over and said, "Funny how some people spend their lives waiting for someone to make room." I smiled. Not polite, genuine. "Sometimes you realize you've been standing for so long," I said. "You forgot you could sit somewhere else." She nodded once and turned back to the water. She didn't ask for details. Didn't need them. That kind of woman, the kind who feeds ducks and says things like that, already knows what it means to not be invited and to show up anyway. Back home, I opened my journal to a blank page. Not to write about Delphine or Simone or the wedding. Just about me. For the first time, I didn't frame it around what they'd done. I didn't write in reaction. I wrote in declaration. I'm allowed to exist beyond what I am to other people. I paused, then added, I can outgrow roles I never agreed to play. I closed the journal, set it on the coffee table, and walked to the window. Outside, the sky had gone lavender, just before it folds into dark. There were still things that hurt, still corners I avoided, still songs I couldn't hear without flinching, but I no longer waited for someone to make room for me. Forgiveness, I'd realized, doesn't mean reunion. It just means I no longer carry it in my hands like a dish I need someone to take. They wrote me out. I wrote myself back in, on my own page. I may not have had a seat at their table, but I'll build my own, and this time, the name card will be mine.